Fascinating. That lamppost, that street lamp over there, was a gift. It was a gift to me when I was 5 years old from a man I loved very much, my grandfather. And what a gift. My mother worked at nights when I was little, and I'd stay over at my grandfather's house. He'd read to me until he thought I was asleep, and then he'd tippy-toe to the door. But I was always still awake, and since I didn't know what was going to happen in the dark, I would call to him to leave the light on, and he always did. But one night he came in with a new book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And he sat on the bed and he started to read. And when Lucy went through the wardrobe into the land of Narnia and saw a lamppost, an old London lamppost, that was not only her guide into Narnia, but her guide back again. A lamppost that was there to light her way, to keep her safe, to guide her, to bring her home. I said, I wish I had one of those. And the next night, I promised, the next night when I went into my room at his house, that lamppost was sitting there near the door, and there was a wee light burning in it, Aslan's light. And he told me that was my lamppost, that it would always be there to guide me, to bring me home, to keep me from getting lost. And I never had trouble sleeping from that day on. And if I did, I just dug into the memory of my granddad and my guiding lamp, and soon I was in the land of Nod. In life, my grandfather I was never really sure what he was. Professionally, he was a brilliant mathematician. As a person, he was maybe a bit strange, but fascinating, I thought. He was always talking about weird stuff with numbers. He'd show me weird stuff with numbers. I had a million questions. He always answered those questions. Sometimes with answers I didn't understand. And when I told him that, he would play a game or do a math experiment to show me what he meant. I tried to tell my mother about these amazing games and experiments, but she always got very upset. Then one day, it was the last day I saw him actually, my mother came over to the house and they were arguing. I mean, they were full out going at each other. And I hid at the top of the stairs and I kept hearing my name, and the anger around it made my heart skip. And I heard him screaming, "Fine, take him away then, and don't come back. Even if I never see him again, it will still happen. It's his destiny. He has the gift." And my mother called at me to get down the stairs, and we went out the front door. It slammed, and we never saw my granddad again. We moved away a short time later to another city, and my guiding light faded. I never forgot it or my granddad, but they, he and that lamppost, vanished into the past. We never knew any more about him until I got a letter from a lawyer telling me that my deceased grandfather had left me his estate, a few dollars, and his house. I was a bit upset that we hadn't heard from anyone, but the lawyer told me that my granddad insisted we not be called, not even notified, until he was buried and the house had been, or the will had been probated. I called my mother, who actually seemed upset. I told her about the house. There was this long silence. And then she said, maybe it's over then. I tried to ask her what she meant, but she had hung up. A few days later, my daughter was born, and to be honest, for a while, nothing else mattered. But after a few weeks, I told my mother I was going to come take a look at the house and figure out what to do with it. She was silent, and then, almost reluctantly, she started to describe a music box and asked me to see if I could find it. So, on June 13th, 2019, about 8 weeks after my grandfather's passing, I came to the house. I looked around this beautiful 1890s abode with stone and wood and greenery everywhere. I went up to the attic, and the minute I walked in, I saw that lamppost. I had always wondered where it had gone, and there it was. Without being overly dramatic, my life changed forever. June 13th, 2019. It's funny, I felt a kind of trepidation as I came to the house, and as I was walking around, a kind of feeling of deja vu, like this had happened before, like it was meant to be. Do you know what I mean? It's silly, I thought, but as I stepped into the attic, it was so like an office, not like an attic, and these cloths on everything. You know, when somebody covers stuff up like this, it's usually because they know they're coming back in a while, or they have somebody looking after the stuff and they want it kept in condition. According to the doctor, my grandfather knew he wasn't coming back, so why was it all covered? It's as if the room was waiting for someone to arrive. This is a kind of replica of that room. The layout made me curious, so I started to pull off the cloths to see what was there. I love this. This was in my room whenever I stayed over at night, and I did that a lot in later years I was with them. It always felt so mysterious, so elegant, so otherworldly. I remember this. He had this in the house when I was a kid. Made me laugh. Every time I came over, I had to sign in. And my name is actually still there. And there was always a lot of other names from folks, I guess, who come over to visit, and they all signed in too. I remember asking him once why he did this. He looked at me and he said, very dramatically, I thought, "It will all come clear one day, dear boy, as soon as I find the constant. All in good time." Oh, books in a case. Carl Sagan, Amelie Noether, Katherine Johnson, Niels Bohr, Robert Oppenheimer. That's a great movie, by the way. Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking. I mean, they were all autographed. Alan Slate, I looked at it. It was autographed too. Oh, dear God. Nostradamus. It wasn't autographed. He used to let me write on this when I was a kid. It was his adding machine and my toy, he'd say. Another blackboard. It had this formula on it. It looked looked familiar, rang a bell somewhere, but I must confess it meant nothing to me at the time, so I just pushed it aside and left it there. It's funny, my mother used to refer to my grandfather as a pack rat. He liked to refer to himself as a curio collector. Oh, a desk, a roll top. I hadn't seen one of these in years. I love these. Look at all these old magazines. My grandfather always subscribed to a number of magazines. There's Life, 1979, National Geographic, at this time, 1967. Life, 1979. Pack rat? Then I saw this. Not just my gift, not just my lamppost, and my Narnia books that meant so much to me when I was growing up. Not just this picture of me when I was really little. No, I saw this. June 13, 2019. That was this day, the day I was here, 8 weeks after my grandfather passed away. What the hell is going on, I wondered. How can this be? And his one word came into my mind, how can this be random? I looked around the room. So, okay, my grandfather was a mathematician. I took another look at that equation on the big blackboard, the one I pulled out earlier. There was something about it. What was it? Couldn't figure it out. But there was a key hanging on a ribbon on the edge of the blackboard. Well, my spidey senses really started to tingle as I looked around the room, and right there, on top of that trunk, what to my wondering eyes should appear? A miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer? No, but a music box that looked exactly like the one my mother described. Shook it, it rattled something in there. Key doesn't fit. But then I noticed the names on it, all on a brass nameplate. Marceline, Liza, Zelfianne, Louise, Margaret, hold on here, Shayla. That's my daughter's name. My mother's name is Margaret, her mother's name is Louise. What is this? I actually called my mother at this point. I asked her about the names. I told her I found the music box and there are these names on it. Marceline, Liza, Zelfianne, Louise, Margaret. I waited. She said, yes, that's why she wanted the music box. All the family matriarchs' names were on it, going back to great-great-great-grandmother, and she wanted to put my daughter's name on it and make a gift of it to her as a family keepsake. I waited a couple beats. Then I said, it's already there, Ma. Shayla's name is already there. I heard a gasp, and then nothing. Dead silence. What if he was right? I heard her say. Maybe he was right. Please bring it home with you when you come. And she was gone. I mean, what the hell was that about? I gotta tell you, I was getting a little bit nervous. But if I'm being honest, I was getting a little bit excited too. I mean, my lamppost, my daughter's name. I mean, we hadn't even come up with names for her until after she was born. Well, we came up with names, but we hadn't settled on one. And the name we finally selected came about when Anne was holding her in her arms. She showed her to me. I looked at her and I said, Shayla. And we both laughed, and, well, this was starting to feel like it was Dr. Caligari's Cabinet of Mysteries that I was looking through here. I set the music box aside so that I would remember to take it home with me later that evening. And yes, believe it or not, this is a picture of me when I had hair. I took a look at the key that I found, looked back at the trunk, thought, yep, went over to the trunk, tried to open it, locked, tried the key. Yes. And up came the lid. The trunk was full. I mean full. These were on top. And as I looked at them, the memories came flooding back as if it were yesterday. These were from one of the games we played back then. We played it dozens of times. He kept the scribbles. There was a note attached to one of them. Remember these, Robert? How the hell does he know I'm going to be reading this? And look, here, that blasted date again, June 13th, 2019. Remember how we played this game, Robert? How much we played this? Games are a tool, Robert. Learn them and use them. Learn them and use them. I had no idea what that was supposed to mean. But what I came to realize between that June 13th day when I entered this room, what I came to realize was that this game we played was the first step, the jumping off point of trying to understand the link or divide between destiny and chance. And the reason he left these in the trunk was so that I could show that first step to others as well. So, welcome, others. We are going to be taking a special journey together here tonight, and this little game is the first. Yeah, the first step down the path of trying to determine whether our actions are destined or random. Hi, how are you? Oh, what's your first name?
Carla.
Carla?
Yes.
Carla, would I be able to get you to help me in just a moment? All right. When everybody arrived here, you were asked that for those that would like to potentially participate to place your name on a piece of paper, fold it up, place it in the guest's basket, and then write a career down on another piece of paper, fold it up, and put it in the careers basket. Carla, what I'm going to actually do in a moment, if you wouldn't mind please, is go into the guest's basket, reach in and randomly select one, open it up, read the name, and we have a microphone there that you can read the name into, and when you're finished, fold it back up, but don't put it back in the basket. We have a clear container over here. If you wouldn't mind just dropping it in there. Would that be okay? All right, excellent. So Carla, I'll have you randomly select our first guest. Yeah.
Ian Sutherland.
Ian Sutherland. All right, thank you very much. Hey, Carla, can I call on you again to do this throughout?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's Carla, everyone, and Ian. There's Ian. Step into my grandmother's attic. Nice to meet you, Ian. Now we're going to keep up the tradition. I'm going to ask you to sign in. So technically, you're going to be guest number 2. This is not an ego thing, but I'd like to stay number 1. That's great. So just print your first name here and the first initial of your last name over there. Oh, you know what? I should actually. All right, Ian. Yes, let me just erase the rest of these here. Perfect. All right, Ian. Would you do me a favor? Would you mind going to get the careers basket and bring it over here? You just place it on this surface here. That would be wonderful. Now, this is a game my grandfather and I played all the time. Now, Ian, I'd like you to reach in and randomly select 2 careers. Don't open them just yet. And we're going to play the careers game. All right, you have 2? Excellent. And I'll just have you stand at the opposite end of the blackboard. Now, when we played this game, my grandfather would play it one way, and then when it was my turn, it was played a different way. This will make sense in just a moment. Now, my grandfather and I played lots of games, but not games that you'd be familiar with. We never played Goldfish or Monopoly or Snakes and Ladders, nothing like that. These were all games that he invented himself. They were different, but they were fun. At least I thought they were fun. We're going to play one of them right now. As I said, the careers game. Now, this is what my grandfather would do. He would hand me one of the careers. He would take a look at the career that I had given him. And what he would do is he'd take a piece of chalk and he would simply draw a picture. And I would have to guess what the career is based on the picture. He couldn't write any letters or numbers or words. It had to be strictly a drawing. So Ian, I'm going to draw a picture, and as soon as you think you know what the career is, shout it out.
All right.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm not great at drawing, so the quicker you get this, the better it will be for me. Right. All right, here we go. Let me think the best way of doing this here. Okay. Now it's, how can I do this here? So let me try this here. Oh, thank you very much, Ian. Chef. Okay? So that's what my grandfather would do. Now, I know this looks very familiar to a game that I'm sure many, if not most of you are familiar with, Pictionary. But Pictionary came out maybe, 20, 30 years ago. We were doing this long before Pictionary was a thing. But this is what my grandfather and I would do. However, when it was my turn, this is where it got different. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was that my grandfather was using these games to further his study to try to figure out whether chance or destiny ruled our lives. So you're going to catch a glimpse of that right now. Now, this is what my grandfather would do. Just grab some of these scribbles here. What I'm going to get you to do in just a moment is not draw a picture, not write out any letters, words, or numbers. You're simply going to scribble. So for example, here, my grandfather got out of the scribble that it was a lawnmower. Hockey player, that's a Canadian thing, right? Or Zamboni driver. So these are just examples of teacher, airplane driver. So that's all I want you to do. So within about 5 seconds or so, you're going to take a piece of chalk and you're simply going to scribble. So again, no pictures, no letters, numbers, without looking at that. So we're going to try to determine chance or destiny here. So go ahead, Ian. Well, that was important. All right. So now, what my grandfather believed is that no matter what scribble that you thought you might do initially, you were destined to do a particular scribble because everything is planned out. There's no other option. Okay, this is his early theories. This is what he was working on. So he would look at my scribble and he would point out various things that led him to what he felt the career was. So as an example, you have a very elaborate scribble that you've done here. In fact, you've taken up a good portion of the board. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But what's interesting, there's a couple things that really stand out for me here, that are leading me to a particular career. Now, I've had the benefit for the past 4 years of studying my grandfather's journals, and so I'm learning some of his stuff. And this is one thing that I've been really focusing on. So, if you look at what you have here, it's a lot of curves, but there's a couple points here. There's one point right here. It's kind of sharp, so this area here, and you've got another one over here. You see what I'm pointing out? Those, to me, are very predominant within that scribble. Everything else is, you could say, fairly similar, but those two things really stick out. Kind of almost like eye teeth. That's what I'm getting from those particular drawings, which would lead me to believe that this has something to do with either like a dental hygienist or maybe a dentist or something in that vein. That's what I get from that scribble. Ian, please read the career you selected.
Dentist.
Thank you very much for playing my grandfather's career game. So, that was the first reminder that my grandfather laid on me. As a kid, it was meant mostly just for fun. Whet the appetite of a young boy. But the underlying message, if you will, behind it is that out of chaos and randomness, we can achieve meaning. If we just learn how to look properly, we can see what is destined to be there. So, okay, back to that date, June 13th, 2019. I gotta tell you, I was becoming really intrigued. I looked around the room and saw I had yet to uncover what appeared to be a table. I wandered on over, uncovered it. Surprise! It was a table. There were a couple items on the table. It was a old cassette tape recorder, a couple packs of cards, a jar of dice. You have to indulge me, I have to try. Lucky sevens, 9. No casino tonight. And one other thing, cash box, combination number lock. Looked interesting, whatever it was. Thought maybe I'd take it home with me, spend a few hours that evening and see if I could figure out the combination. And if not, well, there's always a hammer and chisel. As I set the cash box aside, as I set it down, it came to me that every game we played, every talk we had, my granddad and me, there was a point to it all. And sometimes that point only becomes apparent much, much later on. He would always say that things were destined to happen on destined days. I looked back again at that lamppost, looked back at that date. Destiny calls, I thought, as I laughed to myself, and I went back to the trunk. My grandfather was, if I haven't already mentioned it, kind of, I don't know, disturbed. I mean, he was a math genius, but he also talked to people, people that weren't there. He had 3 friends with whom he discussed everything, and they had really weird names, Radonelli, Faxton, and Cardova. And in case you haven't guessed it, they weren't real. But let me rephrase that. They weren't flesh and blood real. I think they were imaginary, and I think he had said that they had been lent to him. Oh, look at this. I do not remember ever seeing this before. This looks really cool. Oh. That is cool. But then I noticed this. Look at this. Here on this envelope. 18, 15, 2, 2, 9, 5. That's my secret code name when I was a kid. Silly and stupid and simple as pie. A number equals a letter. The first game we all do. The first code really any of us ever learns. A equals 1, B equals 2, and so on throughout the alphabet. This was my code name. 18, 15, 2, 2, 9, 5. R-O-B-B-I-E. Robbie. I'd find notes in the mailbox or stuffed under my hiding rock where I kept my treasures, and as soon as I saw the numbers, I knew he left me a message, and I read it immediately. The same thing here, I tore it open. Well, Robert, if you are reading this, then my formulae are true, and you are already consciously beginning to follow and to discover your destiny. You know from our time together long ago that I do not believe in chance. I believe, and I think I have mathematically shown, that events are, for want of a better word, destined to occur. I have spent years looking for the destiny constant, and like that old song, at last I found it, and I'll never let it go. I told your mother your destiny would take you to various platforms demonstrating this principle, and that I would even be able to help from the other side of my death, from the grave, as it were. She didn't like that. We had a horrible fight. I know you remember, and she took you away. I never wanted us to be apart, Robert, but your mother was so worried about you after that gentleman she married left you both that my, shall I say, somewhat eccentric behavior scared her, made her even more protective. And I knew she would be better able to cope without me around, so I stayed away. That was painful, but I knew that you would find me again after I had passed and would show others what my work meant. When you teach or demonstrate to others, Robert, start with the careers game we used to play. That's the game that we just played with Ian here just a few moments ago. It's a small step, but it introduces the feeling of how every choice is destined. Whether it is the selection of a small piece of paper or the grandson that is born to you. I am so sorry about so much. I love you. 18, 15, 2, 2, 9, 5. And there, on top of the letter, is that date again. June 13th, 2019. He always said things were destined to happen on destined days. That was the day I was reading this. I shook off the goosebumps and I went back to the trunk. And then I found this. Another envelope. With a cassette tape inside. A cassette tape. Well, of course a cassette tape. It had completed destiny versus chance experiment tape written on it. Well, naturally I took it over to the tape recorder that was still working that he left on the table, and I put it in and I played it. Now that June day, I sat at the table and I listened and I learned. But here today, I want to set things up a little bit differently. What I'd like to do before we get to the recording is I would like to play a game that my grandfather and I played all the time. I love this game. It had a really weird name that as a kid I had no idea what it meant. The game was called Random Chance. So we're going to play Random Chance. And I'm sorry, Carla, would you please randomly select our third guest? And we are going to play the game called Random.
Jackie Norrie.
Jackie, all right. Jackie, nice to meet you. I'll have you sign in. Welcome to my grandfather's attic space. All right. And just the first initial of your last name over there. Perfect. And Jackie, I'm going to ask you to have a seat right here. Thank you. Now, I'm going to use what my grandfather referred to as the isolation booth. It serves a purpose.
Okay.
Now, this is what's going to take place. This game is called random, which means you're going to be making a random decision. Take that pack of cards, remove the cards from that case, and you can just toss the case on the floor in front of you. Now, I'd like you to mix up the cards,
Like a regular shuffle or just?
whatever you'd like to do.
Okay.
And when you're done, make sure the cards are all face down, because it's important that you don't see a card and nobody here sees a card, because this has to be completely at random.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to step behind the isolation booth, just as my grandfather always did. When I do that, what I like to do is anywhere within those cards, remove one card, don't look at it, don't let anybody see it, place it on the center of the table, and just wait till I'm behind the isolation booth.
That's it. Okay, I'll probably do again.
Yeah. Give him a little bit of a mix.
Okay.
Okay? But that's exactly what I want you to do, and let me know when you've done that, okay?
Okay.
So, now, behind the
I can do it
isolation
now.
booth,
Okay.
all done?
Yes.
Now, this is where the game gets really fun. Are you ready?
Yes.
I'm gonna count to three, and on the count of three, I want you to take those cards, I want you to throw them up in the air and create a snowstorm.
Okay.
All set?
Yes.
Count of three. 1, 2, 3, now! Wow. That was impressive. Now, Jackie, what I'd like to do is pick them up, please. Carla, my memory is horrible. Oh, my apologies. Carla, would you please select 2 more guests? Because now we're going to play the game of chance. So this will be guest number 4 and guest number 5.
Rick Spinney.
Rick. Hi, Rick. Nice to meet you. I'll have you sign in, please, Rick.
Gina Brown.
Gina Brown. Thank you, Carla. I'll have you just have a seat right here, please. And Gina. I'll ask you to have a seat right here, Gina. Now, we're going to be playing the game Chance in just a moment, but before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug our tape deck into our house speakers. Oops. Hopefully this is work here. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my grandfather, and you will hear his voice directing us from the other side of the grave. Isn't that what he told my mother that freaked her out so much? Directing us along his path of destiny, so we can appreciate what he discovered. So let's begin by hearing what he has to say.
Nothing occurs at random. Robert, when you were a young boy and would come over to the house or stay over, we used to play many games. But these, as you have probably surmised, weren't merely games. We played them like games, we certainly had fun, but they were also experiments designed to further my studies and to allow me to test my chance or destiny hypothesis. Which one governs our lives? Always remember, nothing occurs at random. Now, since you're listening to this, I presume you are now playing these games with others, and you have played random and are starting on chance. If so, there should be 2 people seated at the table, just as you and I did on dozens of occasions, and of course, 1 person sitting alone at a separate table. I turn it over to you, my dear grandson. Make me proud. But I would ask you one boon, young discoverer. Please allow me to finish these routines for you. A voice from the grave, so to speak. Your mother would be so distraught.
Yes, she would be. No pressure. All right, before we continue with the recording, we're going to play the game of chance. And the object of the game is very simple. What we have to do is we have to find out at the end of playing 2 rounds who ends up with the most face-up cards. Simple. And the rules are quite simple as well, all right? So take your cards and turn them all face down. Now, it's important that one of the rules is that the cards have to remain flat on the table the entire time. Can't pick any cards up. The reason being is that we don't want cards to inadvertently flip over, because that would be cheating. So, we're going to do this one at a time. Now, I should point out that every time I came to my grandfather's attic, I always sat in the chair that you're sitting in. That's known as Robbie's chair. My grandfather always sat over here. Okay? So, to begin, what I'd like both of you to do is mix your cards. Just take both of your hands, just kind of spread them around, and carefully just blend them into each other. So you're changing positions. All right. Good job. And now gather them into a pile. It doesn't have to be neat. Perfect. Now we're going to start over here with Rick. Rick, you're going to make a decision. What you're going to do is you're going to create 2 piles of cards. So just take as many or as few cards as you like and create a second pile. Okay. And now you're going to do the same thing, please. Perfect. Now, what I want you to do is you're going to make a decision. You're going to turn one of those 2 piles so all the cards are now face up. Whichever one you'd like. Rick and Gina, I'd like to do the same thing. So this is where the game gets interesting. Now this is round 1. Again, who's going to end up with the most face-up cards at the end? I want you to now switch the face-up piles with each other and then carefully blend the face-up and the face-down. So just mix your face-up and the face-down so you get them mixed up a bit. Okay. So they remain flat, and now gather them into a pile. It does not have to be neat. So that was round 1. So this is where it becomes difficult to strategize this game. Rick, now I want you to create 2 piles again. And now Gina, create 2 piles. Now Rick, you're going to turn one of those piles completely over. The only thing I'll ask this time is keep your hand on it because we have a situation that the cards are face up, face down. Just want to make sure, so just keep your hand on that one. And Gina, you make a decision. Now, those piles, you switch with each other again. So now you can see this is where it becomes difficult to strategize. And again, just blend them together. Both piles together, yes. And then just gather them into a pile. Now, Gina, Rick, let's see who won the game of chance. Count how many face-up cards you each have, please. I have to say, when I played this with my grandfather, I won probably about 50% of the time. All right, so I think I know what the result's going to be here, not the specifics, but I think we know what one. You have 24, Rick. How many do you have, Gina? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But since you're sitting in the chair that I represented. Perfect. All right, so that's the game of chance. But as I've already said, that I've since discovered that he was using these games to further his studies. So I'm now going to continue with the recording. He's going to give a set of instructions. Do not do anything until I pause the tape. So here we go.
Thank you, Robert, for bringing me back to the game. Person in Robbie's chair, I need you now to further randomize things by turning over all your cards, the face-up cards face down, the face-down cards face up. Thank you.
Okay. So now we have a completely different scenario, different condition.
Now, through chaos, randomness, and decisions you both have made, you have playing cards on the table in front of you. Some are face up, some are face down. The next step is 4 simple tasks. Both of you, please remove all the cards that are face down in your piles. Push them aside. We don't require them anymore. We will just focus on the face up cards.
So just take the face down, but we'll just put them up to the front here, out of the way.
Second, each of you count your face-up cards, add them together, and I am most confident to tell you your number will be 19.
Just think about this. Count how many cards you have, let's add them together. 12. I believe that's 19.
Yes.
I know, right? One different decision would have had a completely different result. Let's continue.
Third, separate the black cards from the red cards, count how many black cards you each have, add them together. I dare say your response will be 13.
You have 9. You have 4. 13. I know.
And the final task, separate the spades from the clubs, count the total number of spades. I dare say this number will be 6.
4 plus 2 is 6. Think about all the decisions you just made. 19 face-up cards, 13 of those face-up cards were black, 6 of those black cards were spades. One different decision, you would have had a completely different result. Do you remember my grandfather's adding machine? What question would you like to ask?
If we do this again right now, do it all over again, would the result be the same?
More than likely, yes, but not always. This is what's interesting. We're going to go a little bit further. Here we go.
When all the tasks have been completed, push the face-up black cards to the side, leaving only red cards face up.
Okay, so just take the black cards, just put them up front, and let's just spread the red cards up in the center area here at the table. Great, thank you.
Now, for many years, one thing always puzzled me. These remaining cards, these red cards, would always, always, always be hearts, except for one diamond. One diamond, always. Why? Nothing occurs at random. So one day, Robert, after we had played both these games together, one after the other, and you had gone back to your mother's, I was clearing up, and I looked at your card, the card you had left on the little table, and I was astounded. I realized I'd been working this experiment completely from a wrong perspective. Please have your random guest bring over the card they have on their table and set it down on this table, face down.
Okay, could you just take the hearts and just add the hearts to the other cards? And without looking, would you please bring your card over here and just place it on the table,
Face down?
face down? Here we go. No, stay here.
This lone diamond from the random table, believe it or not, always, always, always is destined to be identical, completely identical to the target card in the game of random. Robert, please turn the cards over.
So turn it over, please. Thank you all very much for playing Random Chance. Coincidence? Random chance? Or destiny? Factor in everyone making their own choice, and the odds defy description. So, I don't know. Like my grandfather used to say, the games only reveal what is destined to happen. My grandfather this whole idea of destiny versus chance is not new. Philosophers have been arguing about it for millennia. The ancient Greek philosopher Leucippus said, nothing occurs at random. Others argue that our choices are determined by forces beyond our ultimate control, perhaps even predetermined all the way back to the Big Bang. Others shout out against that idea, screaming, we live by free will. I don't know if you know the late author, Christopher Hitchens. He was an atheist, wrote a ton of books on faith and politics and culture, pretty influential in academic circles. He was asked once whether he believed he had free will. Of course I do, he said. Of course I do. I don't have a choice. My grandfather totally bought Leucippus's philosophy, and he would spend his life devising experiments to demonstrate that, one of which he just guided us through. Pretty cool, huh? This ghost from the past moving us to a destined future. So, okay. Philosophers. Let's look at this from a physicist's point of view. According to quantum mechanics as postulated by physicists like Heisenberg and Bohr and Oppenheimer, a subatomic particle like an electron can be anywhere and everywhere at once. But nothing is certain until it is observed. That's kind of like the question, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise if there's nobody there to hear it? But in this case, the question would be, does anything in this universe happen if there's nobody there to observe it? Well then, another physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, quickly pointed out that if nothing is real until it is observed, then a cat sealed in a box with a radioactive isotope, which, when it disintegrated, would trigger the release of a poison that would kill the cat. So no matter what, whether that trigger goes off or not, that cat is both alive and dead until we open the box and it is observed. Nothing is real until it is observed. Einstein hated all that. Although what's interesting is he was one of the first to postulate the concept of quantum physics, but he hated it. God doesn't roll the dice was one of his favorite expressions. My grandfather loved that one. Now, classical physics, on the other hand, is deterministic, meaning that with enough data on particles in the universe, all things are predictable, whether chosen or not. And that goes back to what I said earlier about everything should have been laid out as far back as the Big Bang. So, what is a thinking mathematician to do? For my grandfather, there was a trigger moment that made his choice inevitable. He had been married twice. His first wife, Dorothy, was an incredible woman, very talented, very beautiful. She told him the story once that when she was 5 years old, her mother, who was born in England, wanted to go home and visit her family. So Dorothy and her mother left on a boat sailing for London. Now, Dorothy's mother wanted to enjoy the nightlife of the boat, but with a 5-year-old daughter in check, she really couldn't do much. There happened to be a lady on the boat with them from their hometown here in Canada, and the lady was moving to England to live. And she, Lillian Marks was her name, said she'd be happy to look after the little Dorothy. They became very close, that wee little girl and Lillian. Lovely little story. The marriage didn't last. It really wasn't right, sadly. My grandfather was too caught up in his career to focus any time on their relationship, and they drifted apart. But one day, maybe 10 years later, he was in a small Ontario town, and he saw this young lady run into the lecture theater. And his heart went thump, 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 and his breathing stopped. And of course, he made a point of meeting her. They became instantly attracted to each other. And in the course of conversations that ensued over the weeks, he had told her that he had been previously married, and among other things, the story of his first wife, Dorothy, when she was 5 years old, and Lillian. There was no response after that, just silence. And he thought, oh God, I've blown it. She doesn't want to be with a divorced man. It's over. And then she said, I know that story. Lillian is my mother. Coincidence? Random chance? Or was it destiny? That, he told me, and it's in these journals I discovered, that event was the deciding factor. And he would spend his life showing people through rigorously tested experiments that we all have the opportunity of seeing destiny in action. This journal is an experiment he created. Well, actually, they're all experiments he created. This one is one of the first, and I've spent the past 4 years studying and learning them. This one begins with these words. The destination of my creative wanderings are a hidden paradise filled with new discoveries. And as soon as you see them, you have to keep trying to reach them again as though it were a type of Shangri-La. He knew in his core that despite the illusion of free choice, or even with free choice, the decisions we make and their results are all destined to happen. And he set out to find a formula that would define destiny versus chance as a mathematical principle. And I wondered that day if maybe that's what that was. We need to test my granddad's theories again. Perhaps catch a glimpse of that hidden paradise, chance, or destiny. Let's see. Carla, could you please select our 6th guest? And in a moment, I'm going to have you select 3 more in just a minute. So who will be our 6th guest?
Sebastian.
Sebastian. Nice to meet you, Sebastian. All right, I'm going to have you sign in. So what do you think of quantum physics? Good answer.
Complicated.
Complicated. All right, Sebastian. That's great. I'm going to ask you, before we do anything, could you go over to the careers basket, place your hand aside, randomly select one of the careers, and just keep it in your hand. I don't want you to open it just yet. All right, if you can do that, please, and then come back to the table. You have just one. All right, now Sebastian, have a seat right here. And Sebastian, you just sit tight for a few minutes. And Carla, let's get ourselves 3 more guests. So we'll be guest number 7, 8, and 9. So number 7.
Russell.
Russell. Number 7, Russell. Nice to meet you, Russell. Sign in, please. Oh, the invisible man is here. Perfect. Russell, I'm going to have you stand right here. Facing this way. That'd be great. Thank you.
Megan. Knock or neck.
Megan, Megan, all right, Megan, nice to meet you. So you are guest number 8, and when you're finished, we'll just have you stand next to Russell, please, and our 9th guest.
Me.
That's not acceptable. No, just put your, don't put it into that clear, don't put it back in the basket, just put it to the side, and just select somebody else, please. Thank you, Colin.
Too bad it wasn't the lottery or something. Adelaide.
Adelaide, all right, thank you. Adelaide? No, no problem. No, take your time. Nice to meet you, Adelaide. So if you'd sign in and just actually stand over here. experiment. So we have Russell, Megan, and Adelaide. This is what we're going to do in this particular experiment. Before we start, though, what I'm going to do, Sebastian, is I'm going to put this journal in front of you. I might get you just, you see the highlighted section here?
Yeah.
I might get you to read that to me in just a few minutes when we get to it, because I have a hard time remembering it. All right, so this is what's going to happen. We're going to start, sorry, here, Russell. You're going to come to the table. You're going to place your hand in the jar of dice, remove a handful of dice, and simply place them on the table. And then you're going to select one of these 4 numbered cards. It's either 1, 2, 3, or 4. Whichever number you select randomly, you're then going to select one of the 4 stanchions. On top of the stanchions, there's a frame. And you're going to place that numbered card in the frame. There's a slot at the top, and just make sure the number's facing outwards. All right? And then we'll continue with Megan and Adelaide to do the same thing. Right? And then when you're finishing, you can go back to your seat. So Russell, do you want to start things off? And there's selection of dice. And what number do you have? Number 3. Okay, pick one of the stanchions. And thank you very much. Russell, perfect. Good. All right, next, Megan. Russell, there'll be none of that. It doesn't matter where, so what number do you have? Number 1, all right. So Megan, you. Okay, and Adelaide, thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
I have 1 of 2 choices, or take a handful of dice first. No problem. No problem. And, excellent, and then what number do you have? You have number 2, and you have 1 of 2 stanchions you can select. Thank you very much. All right. Have a seat. Now, Sebastian, you don't have a choice. You're left with this number. And the number is 4, which we'll get to in just a moment. But Sebastian, what I'd like you to do without looking is reach into the jar and just remove 1 die. Don't look. You can actually look at it and announce its color out loud. What color is it?
Red.
It's red? All right. Are there any red die here? Is that red or orange? It's hard to tell in this light. I just want the red. That's orange. Okay. All right. So we're going to put that back in the jar. What I'd like to do, Sebastian, could you take, you have 4 red dice, could you just place them up here? Out of the way. Thank you. Again, realize what's taking place here. We had 3 different individuals, Russell, Megan, and Adelaide, that randomly reached their hand into a jar of different colored dice and placed them on the table. Now, Sebastian, you randomly selected 1 color, which was red. If you had selected a white die, we'd only have 1 die to work with. If you had selected a black die, we'd have 3 black die. But you randomly selected red, so we have 4 to work with. Right, so let's do these. Drop them on the floor and everything. How many steps on it? You have better eyesight than I do, thank you. Now you were left with the number 4. So what that means is I want you to roll those 4 dice 4 times and announce the total each time. All right, so pick up the 4 dice and roll them, and then add the total on the top. Okay, so 6 and 4 is 10, and 19. Very good. So we have 19. So that's the first roll. 1 more roll. 10. All right. So we have 19 and 10. That's the second roll. 2 more rolls. 14. All right. And the final roll. 15. Excellent. You can have a seat. And this goes in here. So we have the total of, yeah, 15. Now, look at my grandfather's appendix. Now it's appendix 2. And what I need from you is, what is the exact page number?
Appendix book 10.6, section 1, page 3.1.
212. All right. Right here. Again, realize what has happened here completely at random. The first time we rolled the dice, I had a total of 19. What my grandfather has here with this experiment, he has hundreds of careers on a chart, all listed and numbered. If it was number 19, what's the career that's listed at number 19, Sebastian?
Financial analysis.
Financial analyst. Very good. You had one role was 10. So what would have been the career at number 10?
Taylor. Or sorry, no,
That'd be plumber. But you have 15. So what is the career at 15? Social worker. Sebastian, could you read the career that you randomly selected, please? So, again, where do we begin? Why do we make the choices we make? And when we do, are they random? Or is there some other force at work? I mean, look at this last experiment. The odds against arriving at our conclusion are astronomical. But as you can see, and as I've learned, if we just follow my grandfather's directions, any individual can arrive at whatever the destined point will be. I still hadn't grasped the math that he used or created to understand how he could be certain that things were destined to happen. Though I don't want us to become confused here. None of what he was doing was designed to make things happen. They were designed to see what was happening. And that's the other part of the quantum physics stuff I was talking about, because it involves time as well. Like many great scientists, Grandpa Robert, yes, I was named after him, he believed there was no future, there's no past, it's all just there, all at the same time. Past, future, it is all simply the present, the constant present. We are taught that now is the only single moment that exists. But as I talked about earlier, many physicists argue that that's not the case, that we exist in all times at once. It is one continuum, and we as humans just see one flash of it at any given moment, and we call it now. I remember when I was about 11 years old, it was not long asking for Mom and Granddad had the big falling out. I remember him reading to me from a book that said, in our dreams, we were free of the conviction that time moved forward. In our dreams, we could encompass, see, move into past, present, future, all at the same time. And we could all test the proof of that. The game was simple. You wake yourself up in a dream, write it down, and then go back into the sleep zone. Sounds kind of hard to do, but really it's not that difficult. You keep a pencil by the bed and a piece of paper, and in a dream, you make yourself wake up, write down the details of that dream, and then go right back to sleep again. I started doing this, and you know what? It was actually starting to work for me. A whole lot of nothing, of course, but I remember one night I dreamt of a red car, a red Ford, bright red, beautiful car, passed me on the street. And the next morning, as I was walking to school, that car was suddenly there, passing me on the street. I saw it. Yeah, okay, big deal. A lot of red cars out there. Not that particular red, maybe. But still, coincidence, right? Random chance. But it stayed with me. Another dream I wrote down, I was in a room with a bunch of people, and they were all talking, seemed kind of intellectual stuff. And I remember one of the people in the throng was this really beautiful woman, and she was serving bar or something. And I remember thinking, wow, that is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And she smiled at me and said, not anymore. And for some reason, I thought that was really amazing, and I woke up and wrote it down. Weird. Anyway, I stopped doing this dream thing. I had exams coming up, and I was discovering girls, and going out with them was a whole lot more interesting than dreaming about whatever, so I forgot these dream things. A few years later, after I graduated from university, I was invited to a party. I rarely ever attended parties, although I went to this one. I was living in Montreal at the time, and I walked into this house in Outremont, and when I walked through the front door, I stopped dead in my tracks. Just up the hallway, right at the corner where a room formed, a bar was set up. And there she was, standing at the bar. And just like that scene in West Side Story, the original one, where the whole world stops and you go into tunnel vision and all you can see is that one person at the end of your tunnel, I walked over and I said, so intelligently, I said, hi, do you live here? She said, no, but I have a key. And not having a clue in Hades what to say or do next, I walked away, circuited the party, and left. True story, this. About 3 weeks later, a friend was invited to another party, and I tagged along. And you guessed it, it was at the same house. I walked in, and there she was, again at the bar. And the room shifted again. And I walked over and I said, do you still have a key? She looked at me. What an astute memory you have. Not anymore. I said, shall we go for a walk? And she said yes. And we went out the front door, and we have been together ever since. True story. So, if we exist in all times at once, then what is going to happen has already happened. And we should be able to devise a test or a formula that would allow us to observe and prove that that is the case. Those journals contain experiments to demonstrate that. My granddad used to say, if the universe is determined, and if I eat toast every morning of my life, but suddenly one morning I eat cornflakes instead of toast, I'm not changing the future. I'm only making the future the way it is. Carla, would you please select our 10th guest?
Simon.
Simon. Just hold on to that before you Simon?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Before
meet
we go into the attic, I'm going to ask you to step over to the table.
Okay.
Now, in that clear container, Carla has placed the 8 previous guests that have been randomly selected. Simon, what I'd like you to do is reach in, randomly select one, and hand it to Carla. Carla, I would like you to open it up and read who that person is.
Russell.
Russell, so Russell, you were number 7, Russell. Actually, you can have a seat just for the time being. Take your applause moment. I will call you back up here in a few moments. All right, we'll just sit tight for a minute. And you can put those into the container. Thank you very much, Carla, for all your help. Simon, sign in. All right, and Simon, I'm going to ask you to stand right over here to my grandfather's collection. So first question, would you consider that he is a pack rat or a curio collector?
Curio collector.
I tend to agree. Now, Simon, I'm going to ask you to do something. I want you to select one of those items in his collection. Now, it could be anything that's on the curio cabinet, anything that's in the cabinet, anything that's on the trunk or on the floor in front of the trunk, or in fact, anything that's on the coat rack. Select an item, and we're gonna bring it over to the table. And if there's a reason you don't want to carry it, I'll bring it over for you, but yeah, anything you'd like. The snowshoes. All right. Over the table, you put it on the table, and just have a seat right here.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Simon, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Now I have to ask, out of all the items, why the snowshoe?
I was reading a book today, and snowshoes were very prevalent in the chapters I was reading, so it kind of felt appropriate.
Coincidence? Random chance? Or maybe destiny? Have you ever snowshoed yourself?
Long time ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, see, that's something I've never done to date. That's something I've always wanted to do, but I've never done it. So is there, you only did it maybe once or twice, is that it, or
A couple times when I was a kid.
when you were a kid
Yeah.
doing it? Okay, well, these are actually apparently, I can't prove this, but apparently these were my great-grandfather's, and apparently he made them himself. Again, I can't verify that, but they are definitely well over 100 years old, and apparently the straps are fairly original. But yeah, I found out that my grandfather in particular absolutely loved the winter and loved snowshoeing, and he did it a lot. I do have another question I want to ask you about this. Is this something that you, especially where you're reading about it, that you might consider doing in the future? Or it's just, yeah, probably never?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the opportunity,
Yeah,
I wouldn't say no.
All right. Well, maybe we could snowshoe together, because I've never done it myself. Right, all right. Now, Simon, you may recall when I first came into my grandfather's attic and I uncovered this table, there were a number of items on it. In particular, right where I'm sat, there was a green metal cash box.
Yeah.
Would you do me a favor? Would you mind going to get the box and bring it over to the table here? Yeah, I will warn you, it's a bit heavy.
Okay.
It's not a light box. It's placed on the table here. Now, I did say that I was going to take the lockbox home, spend a few hours to see if we could figure out the combination. I mean, there's 5 numbers, there's 100,000 possibilities. I did it eventually. But I was too curious to find out what was in that box. So I actually sat in my chair, and I was just putting in a whole bunch of combinations, trying to figure out what it was with no luck. And then I was trying to get inside my grandfather's head. What would he do? What would he put in there as a combination? So as you are sitting there, Simon, you look around the attic space. Is there anything that gives you inspiration or an idea as to maybe what the combination might be?
Well, the 4 numbers on the placards kind of help, I think.
Okay, you want to try? So you'll have to put in 5 numbers. So they have to be in a row.
Okay.
So that one's out of kilter here. So once they're in a row, all you have to do is then just push the knob towards me, and if you have the correct combination, it will unlock. So just try 5. Here's a combination. And those wheels do go both directions. Yeah. Whichever one you like, yeah. Now, it looks like you were almost going for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I was going to ask about forward or phone. But you have 1, 2, 4, 3, 0. So just push the knob towards me, and that's not it. So as I said, I tried dozens and dozens and dozens of combinations with no luck. But sitting where you're sitting, I was looking around the attic as I was trying to figure out what my grandfather would have selected, and I was drawn to one specific thing. His adding machine. 19 face-up cards. 13 of those face-up cards were black. 6 of those black cards were spades. 1, 9, 1, 3, 6. B? Let's try and see. 1, 9, 1, 3, 6. Okay, give it a try. Don't open the lid. That's
Okay. Yeah.
all right. I'm going to tell you exactly what's in that box before we remove it.
Okay.
My grandfather wrote a number of books, all for academics, but he did write one book for the general public called The Key to Destiny. Sadly, he died before it was published. There's only one copy that was printed. It's the editor's proof, which is what's inside this box. He was taking too long to decide what he wanted on the cover of that book to really exemplify in his mind the concept, the key to destiny. When he finally arrived at his decision and he sent it to the publisher, from what I have read, there was a lot of discussion because the publisher couldn't wrap their head around why he wanted on the cover of the book what he wanted. It made no sense to them at all. But Simon, I think it's going to have a lot of meaning for you. Would you please remove the book from the lockbox? Snowshoes.
Wow.
Now, you'll notice, don't open it yet, but you'll notice that there's a bookmark in that book, marking a particular page. This is all my grandfather. In a moment when you open that book, you'll find that there's a sentence that he highlighted, which I'm going to ask you to read loud and clear for the audience. Now, before you actually stepped into the attic, you were asked to randomly select one of the previous guests. It was Russell, and Russell was guest number 7? Number 7. Okay. Would you please open the book where the bookmark is? Simon, I'll ask you to read that highlighted sentence nice and loud.
Through numerous applications of the preceding experiment, it is my conclusion that an individual has no other choice but to select the number 7.
There is no other choice to select the number 7. Okay, put the book down here. I want to point out one other thing.
Yes.
Just put the book here. There's a bookmark that has a number on it. We had Russell, Megan, and Adelaide that randomly selected numbered cards, creating a 4-digit number, 1, 2, 4, 3. What's the number on that bookmark?
1, 2, 4, 3.
I don't know if we can zoom in any closer or not. Coincidence, random chance, or destiny. It was a pleasure meeting you, Simon. Thank you very much. So, going into my grandfather's attic on June 13th, 2019 changed my life. I began practicing and following the steps laid out in his journals. And as I came more and more to understanding, using his formulas, using his mathematics, I came to see how those formulae could reveal something that is destined. And if you are all still with me, I'd love to show you how this works. Russell, would you please join me back up in my grandfather's attic? Nice to see you again.
How are you?
Very good.
Doing a wonderful job.
Thank you very much, but I'm not taking a bow like you did. I'm just kidding. Now, I want to point something out here. Out of everybody that came to this presentation this evening, a number of you, I have no idea how many, decided to put your name on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it in the guest basket. You were one of those individuals. And Carla randomly selected your name. However, you're the only person that has been selected twice because Simon reselected you. Could have been one of the other guests, but he selected you. My grandfather has given me a tremendous gift. And I've been learning and studying his ways, his theories, and trying to apply them. Everything that you have seen so far and experienced has been my grandfather's. But now I'm going to show you what I have learned. Russell, I have a gift for you. You're actually going to bring it on. Would you do me a favor? Would you mind going to get my family's music box and bring it over to the table? You can just place my baby pictures on top of the roll top desk, please.
Your work.
I'm so cute, I'll put it on the floor. All right, that's great. Now, I know it's difficult seeing this slide, but you can see the engravings on the top of the plaque. That's the matriarchal lineage. And this name here is what started it all. My daughter's name, Shayla. This is why it bothered me so much. My grandfather died 8 weeks. He died, my daughter was born, it was 8 weeks later that I came into his attic and I discovered this music box. We did not know we were going to have a daughter, let alone have a name for her. But her name was already on this box. So as I said, Russell, I have a gift for you. The key is at the end of the bookmark. Place the key into the lock, and you have to do a full revolve, and then open up the music box, and then you can retrieve your gift. A full revolve, I believe, yeah. No, just go a little bit further. We'll try it now. And just remove the tray, and I'll take the tray. And remove your gift, but don't do anything with it just yet. And that's actually the bottom, so we'll just have you turn it over. And are we able to zoom in quite close with this, or not? Wonderful, okay. So right on this dot back here. Great, thank you. All right, now, Russell, I'd like you to open up the box. And don't remove the item yet, just open up and let's see what's in there. And what it is a medallion. And it's a medallion that my grandfather actually designed. And I'm sure afterwards, if you want to see it up close, Russell may allow you to see it. But it's at the very top, it's my grandfather's house. And if you look close at the very top, it is the attic window. And this is the replica here of that window. There's a lot of waves. He was born in Nova Scotia, but lived most of his life in Ontario, but he loved the ocean, he loved the water. And at the very bottom is a key, the key to destiny. Russell, what I would like to do is I would like you to please read in a loud, clear voice to everybody here what is engraved on the opposite side of that medallion.
Russell, February 10th, 2024.
Coincidence, random chance, or Russell, your destiny. That's your gift. Thank you very much. Yes, you can take your bow if you want. I know.
Oh, you know.
Mark Twain was born in 1835, the day Halley's Comet appeared in the sky. It revisits us once every 76 years. When he was in his 40s, he was asked by a reporter, "When are you going to die?" And Mark Twain responded, "The next time Halley's Comet appears in the sky." He died on his next appearance in 1910. In 1975 in Bermuda, a man riding a moped was struck and killed by a taxi. His brother was supposed to have gone with him that day, but for some reason didn't. 1 year later, the brother, riding the deceased brother's moped, was struck and killed the exact same way by the same taxi, driven by the same driver. In 1861, the U.S. Civil War broke out at the First Battle of Bull Run in Wilmer McLean's house in Manassas, Virginia. He hated the war, and he moved after that battle to the town of Appomattox, where he thought he'd be safe. But in 1865, Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant in Appomattox in Wilmer McLean's new house. On August 6, 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived the atomic bomb blast in Hiroshima and fled to Nagasaki, where just after he arrived, he saw a bright flash of white light and the second atomic bomb exploded. He lived with burns, but he lived until 2010. He is the only person recognized by the Japanese government as having survived both bombings. On April 15, 2019, my grandfather died, and he left a set of instructions and letters and notes to me, all dated June 13, 2019. June 13, 2019. June 13, 2019. June, the 6th month, the 13th day, the 19th year. 6/13/19. Reverse those numbers. 19, 13, 6. The combination to get into the cash box. When we were playing the game of chance, Rick and Gina at the table. 19 face-up cards. 13 of those face-up cards were black. 6 of those black cards were spades. And the 4 of diamonds. I played that game when I was in my grandfather's attic that day several times, and I kept getting the same result. And I had to share it with my friends. I took a picture on this tabletop of one of the 4 of diamonds, and I put it on Instagram. Afterwards, go to my Instagram account, Robert Lamar, and scroll down, and you will find that picture. Look at the date when that picture was posted. 19/13/6, the 6th month, June, the 13th day, the 19th year, June 13th, 2019. That very day that I entered my grandfather's attic, some 8 weeks later, and my life changed forever. All of this, coincidence? Random chance? Or the fulfillment of destiny? Everyone with whom we have worked here this evening were destined, according to my grandfather, to arrive at conclusions that are too far out there to be merely coincidental. All the decisions everyone made, all their choices were destined to occur. Before June 13, 2019, the idea of destiny was, I guess I never really thought about it much at all. But now, each moment of each day feels like a mystery about to unfold. A destined gift. And I love it. So, back to where we began. A gift. What is a gift? We say that artists and scientists are gifted. We present gifts on special occasions. My mother wanted to give that music box to my daughter. We say some have the gift of healing, others the gift of laughter. It would appear that a gift is a special bounty bestowed on us. On June 13, 2019, my grandfather bequeathed to me an extraordinary gift. The gift of seeing this world through the eyes of destiny. He gifted my mother too. She at last began to understand and accept her father. Her whole world took on a new focus, a renewed energy, the desire to cherish every moment of every day. And as for me, to spread Granddad's theories far and wide. It is wonderful. So many things have come into focus. So, thank you all for the gift of being here and for taking the time to explore these games and experiments with me. Russell, it was a pleasure to have met you, and I hope my gift to you has some resonance. If you have friends who need or want to explore their destinies, then send them on over. But I would urge you not to divulge to them anything that took place here tonight. Give them the gift of discovering for themselves how destiny works. Good night to you all, and good night, Granddad.
Anything but the secret, you have to sit on the floor.